The Internet of Things is a broad term that's being used to cover technologies that give network connectivity to everyday objects, from wearable computers to common products such as coffee makers and light switches. What's behind all the excitement of the Internet of Things? How will companies benefit from using IoT technologies? These are some of the issues that we will address. I am the first speaker today, and I'm going to talk about an overview of how you create value using the Internet of Things technologies, and I'll give you some specific examples of how companies have implemented IoT to enhance business value already. So let me start by asking the question, what is the Internet of Things? This is a question that you get a lot of different answers to. There are a host of different interpretations of what exactly is the IoT, but let's go back to a little bit of the history. The term Internet of Things was coined back in 1999 by a gentleman named Kevin Ashton, who was the co-founder and executive director of the Auto ID Center, which was developing RFID for tracking products. And Kevin gave a presentation to some executives at Procter & Gamble where he worked, and he used the term Internet of Things to explain how RFID was connecting objects to the Internet. Don't forget, in 1999, it was sort of the dawn of the Internet. That was a hot topic. And Kevin said, you're basically taking a microcomputer with a radio antenna and using that to connect pallets of P&G products to the Internet, and he used the term the Internet of Things that way. The term has evolved over time. Today, the IoT really refers to sensors that collect information on the condition of people, objects, or the environment and enable it to be shared over the Internet. Products that are connected to the Internet, products are then connected to the Internet via a local area network, cell network, whatever. So there are a couple of key aspects, in my view, that determine what makes something an Internet of Things technology or Internet of Things enabled. So first of all, objects have to have a unique identifier, right? If you can't identify a unique object, then it really is not connected. You're not connected to it via the Internet. So for example, if you had a farm where you're trying to assess the moisture in the soil, if you don't know which sensor you're talking to and where it is, it doesn't help you very much to know what the moisture level is. So you're connecting a specific thing or a specific area or a specific person to the Internet so that we know something about that object, person, or environment. You have to be able to transfer data over a network. Generally, when we talk about the Internet of Things, we talk about wireless technologies. Very rarely does someone talk about plugging for example, a photocopier into an Ethernet port and collecting data on the functions or the status of the machinery within that photocopier as an Internet of Things application, although technically you are connecting that specific unit to the Internet. So we're usually talking about wireless technologies. We're talking about no human-to-human or human-to-computer interaction. So what makes the Internet of Things special is that there is no human involvement particularly. So we're gathering information on soil samples, on the condition of objects without people doing anything. They're reporting automatically via the Internet so that companies can then act on that information. And we have the ability to interact with internal states or external environments. So it's not a one-way communication. Sometimes or often it's a two-way communication. So for example, if our machine is connected to the Internet, it's telling us that it's overheating. We can then make an adjustment, send information down to the device, and then control it remotely. The IoT has been hot for a couple of years now. There's a lot of buzz about it. in general, I believe that some of the buzz will fade, and we're starting to see that already with a lot of negative stories about security and related to breaches. So there's been stories, for example, there was one about hackers who hacked into baby monitors that were connected to the internet and were streaming images of someone's baby over the internet, which is obviously a very scary thought. Another interesting story I read recently, and I don't know whether this is true or not, was that a casino was hacked, its computers were hacked, and the accounts of some of its high rollers were compromised when someone noticed that there was an Internet of Things thermometer connected to a fish tank, a very large fish tank in the lobby. They were able to hack into the Internet-enabled thermometer, use that to get access to the network, and hack some of the accounts. Again, I don't know if that's true, but there are lots of negative stories. So what typically happens if you follow the Gartner Hype Cycle, or you follow the Geoffrey Moore's technology adoption life cycle, technologies get hot, they don't change the world overnight, lots of negative stuff starts coming out, people start not using the technology, and then it sort of incubates, matures, standards are set in place, security is developed, products are enhanced, and then early adopters start using those technologies, and they start to gain traction and eventually become widespread. And I think that the Internet of Things is going to follow the same path that all the other technologies have followed. It will endure this brief period of negative news, and then companies will keep improving their technologies, keep improving their products. The standards will develop, the security will be implemented, and then it will really start to take off. So how do you add value how do you create value from using Internet of Things technologies? Well, there's a number of ways of doing it, and I'm going to explore some of those. So one is to add value to an existing product. So if you are able to connect your product to the internet and enable it to be easier to use, or more convenient to use, or smarter somehow, then you can certainly sell more, and sell more at a higher rate by doing so. So the best example of a product that has benefited and sold a lot from being connected to the internet is the cell phone, right? So originally cell phones made calls over cell networks, then we enable them to connect to the internet, and so folks can watch videos, they can send text, they can do look up movie times, book movies, buy things, just an enormous amount of things. Apple has connected the watch, and many other companies now have similar watches that connect to the internet. There are products like Tile and BIKN, which help you to find your keys by connecting them to the internet. So you can put a little Bluetooth-enabled device that sends signals to a phone and uploads the location of your keys to the internet. There's an application called ParkSight 2.0 that tells you when a parking space is available. So sensors in the space identify that the space is empty. That information goes up to the internet. You download the app. You get updates on what spaces are available. There's something called the Air Quality Egg, which tells you the CO2 and NO2 readings around your home. So this is not an egg, it's an egg-shaped device, a sensor that senses CO2 and NO2 readings in your home, provides information to you about that. Nest smoke detectors, thermostats, cameras, all connected to the internet to drive additional sales, but also to increase the margins by providing extra intelligence to these products. GE aircraft engines have a number of sensors that have been embedded into the engines. They connect to the ground via satellite, so data is sent to the satellite and then to a ground monitoring station. So if, for example, an engine is running hot or there is excessive vibration, these sensors can immediately tell that, radio the ground, and if the flight is going to land in, say, New York City at JFK, technicians on the ground can be alerted that, hey, take a look at that engine, see what the issue is, and repair it if necessary. So adding intelligence to products to lengthen their life cycle, reduce their maintenance, to enable preventive maintenance. All of this increases the value of the product because it's smarter, it's safer to use, and delivers more value to the airline customer who's flying those planes. GE's done a similar thing with its locomotives. Locomotives, you've probably seen the commercial that they advertise about this. So the locomotive provides data on where it is, its weight, what speed it's traveling at, how much fuel it's burning, and the terrain, so that it can optimize velocity at any given moment. So the computer on board can take all of this information and from the sensors that are on the train itself and say, okay, how do I maximize or optimize the speed I'm traveling at this given moment, and make constant adjustments to maximize fuel efficiency and arrival on time. There's a product called Sight Machine, which uses sensors, cameras, and lasers to identify the conditions of machine parts. So Sight Machine can be added into existing products to provide information on the condition of those parts, again, for the purpose of preventive maintenance and ensuring that you have maximum uptime. Train heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment. Some of their newer models report on the performance in real time. So again, output, energy use, vibration, all of this information can be monitored in real time. If there's an issue, say performance efficiency is starting to decline, they can send a repairman out and have it fixed right away. So you don't have to wait until your HVAC equipment goes down before you repair it. Another way to add value using IoT technologies is to enable field services. That is, to maintain or fix products based on what the product reports. You know, as I said, with some of these products, you can do preventive maintenance in advance, and that's one way of increasing the value to your customer. Another option is to enable service level contracts. So you can guarantee a level of service by using real-time data. For example, if you're delivering produce to customers, you can say, look, I will guarantee that your produce will be kept at the optimal temperature for the duration of its trip, and you can capture that information via sensors in real time, have it sent up to the internet, and if there's an issue where it looks like it might go out of the acceptable temperature zone, then you can know that immediately and react and make changes so that you can deliver on those service level requirements. Another option is to focus on outcome-based services. So the customer pays for the results of your that you're delivering and not the products. So for example, instead of buying an aircraft engine, you can instead buy a number of takeoff and landings, and the aircraft engine provider is able to sell it that way because it has real-time information about the health of its engines, can do preventive maintenance, can ensure that it always is delivering uptime, and these products are not going to be in for repairs. So you wouldn't want to do outcome-based services if you didn't have real-time information, because you wouldn't be able to guarantee that you would be able to provide those cycles in an efficient way. Some other IoT strategies, track behavior or activity of assets. You can enhance situational awareness via monitoring and react more quickly to problems. You can monitor and optimize decisions or activities through analytics. So that's a very important aspect of this, is being able to look at, for example, your supply chain, find out that, let's say, for example, your FedEx, your products you have real-time visibility of where your products are through Internet of Things technologies, and a product misses a plane, and now you have to, through analytics, determine what's the optimal way to reroute this product to make sure it gets to where it needs to be on time. And so you can use data analytics to do that. Again, you can use the analytics to optimize performance of any product. So going back to the GE aircraft engine, if it's collecting information on thousands of engines in the air, it can see what the optimal performance looks like, and compare and analyze any engine that is not performing optimally, and determine why. And over time, it can get information on what fixes were done, and then immediately identify problems and know what the solution is, and have those fixes done more quickly and efficiently than was possible before. Automation through enabling machines. So we're seeing more machine-to-machine communication, using IoT technologies to enable robots, for example, to see and react to things. All of this creates additional value. So what are some of the IoT technologies? What underlies these systems? So there are a number of technologies. Active RFID is one. Bluetooth and Bluetooth Low Energy beacons is another. Obviously, a lot of these devices connect to the internet via cellular technologies. Some use GPS and satellite technologies. Many use Wi-Fi, of course, and Zigbee is a low-energy protocol that enables devices to connect to the internet. So those are the fundamental wireless technologies that are enabling the Internet of Things. Passive RFID is also an Internet of Things technology. It is less sophisticated than some of the other sensors that have batteries and can communicate and broadcast, but passive RFID is cheaper. There's no battery to replace, no battery to run out. They can be linked to sensors, and of course, NFC is expanding in phones, so that adds an element that enables anyone with a phone to connect to a passive HF device. And I think fairly soon we'll see UHF in phones, and so you'll also be able to connect to UHF devices. So what should companies do in order to start to think about how to take advantage of these technologies if they're not already doing so? Well, one thing is to start analyzing your products, your assets, and your environments. Make a list of the things that you produce, the things that you use within your operations, within your factories, within your warehouses, and the environments in which you operate. Where would IoT technologies help improve performance and create value? What products could be enhanced by increasing or by connecting them to the internet. You know, in the B2B space, in the B2C space, it's fairly easy, right? A lot of the things that consumers use are now being connected to the internet. In my home, I have a Nest thermostat. I have 3 Nest smoke detectors. I have switches, wall switches that connect to the internet, and I have plugs that connect to the internet. So I can turn off and on plugs if I'm away. I can set timers pretty easily on my phone, just what time I want things to go on, what time I want things to go off. Coffee makers you can program, so at night you put in your coffee grinds and your water. Tell it what time you want it to start, and you wake up in the morning, you've got a fresh pot of coffee already waiting for you. So that's pretty straightforward. But on the B2B side, you know, you've got to think about all the products that you produce. Often companies are producing components of other parts, and so they may need to work with other larger OEMs in order to have a unified IoT strategy to improve the quality or the productivity or the ease of use of that product. Start with a small deployment, test, you know, the technology, make sure that it works, make sure that it delivers value, but also think about the big picture. What will your company look like when everything is connected to the internet? So when all of your machines are sending you feedback, how are you going to deal with that? What's the infrastructure going to look like? The thing that you don't want to do, and this is what we've seen over and over in IT, is companies take a piecemeal approach, and then they add on, and at the end of the day, you wind up with a lot of silos that don't talk to each other, and so you got to break down those silos, rip everything out, start over, and that winds up being very expensive. So what would an Internet of Things platform look like if you started building it now with a view that everything you add on is going to fit in with this unified platform that everybody in the company is going to share? You want the data to be visible to anybody who needs it. So that's an important thing to consider. I'd also add, you know, if you have any questions about IoT technologies or different deployments, you know, feel free to give me a call or email me. I do respond to all emails, so I would be happy to chat with you about anything that you might want to discuss. So that concludes my presentation. I do have time to take a few questions, and then I'm going to move on to the next presentation. So if you have a question, please type it into the Q&A tool, and those will be queued up for me, and I will be happy to answer your questions. I just have to find the Q&A. That's strange. Hold on. I'm trying to find where Q&A is. Okay. Is security a major concern for the IoT strategies you have laid out? Yes, indeed. You definitely want to think about strategy and security together, because there is definitely a lot of concern. A lot of things can be hacked. Look, if you had an airplane engine in the sky, the last thing you would ever want is for someone to be able to hack into that and do something, you know, that could bring down an airplane, for example. But even if you have HVAC equipment, you wouldn't want someone to be able to to be able to jump in and turn off your HVAC equipment or turn on your HVAC equipment or whatever. So so security is definitely something that you want to think about, even if you're doing something that is fairly innocuous, like putting an internet-enabled thermometer in your area. You would want to make sure that anybody that might hack access to that that device can't get access to your network, so you'd want to secure it off. Okay, so let me get all our questions here. What is one of the most popular IoT devices? Well, you know, again, so most companies are putting a Wi-Fi transceiver into their products, which enables it to connect to the internet wirelessly. So, you know, that's really kind of the easiest way to connect. But again, you know, thinking about security, don't forget that anything connected to Wi-Fi can be accessed by someone with a Wi-Fi device. So you're going to have security. So you want to think about that and make sure that you do that. Zigbee is another common protocol used to connect devices to each other and then to a base station that might be wired to an internet-enabled device. So lots of different ways of doing that. But I'd say most companies are using Wi-Fi technology today. Is the healthcare industry leveraging IoT and RFID? Yes, I think so. You know, I think all industries, there are early adopters who are experimenting with different IoT technologies. So there are, of course, requirements that you measure the temperature of refrigerators in hospitals so that any drugs or tissue samples and such are kept at a certain temperature, and so IoT devices are used to measure the environments within those those refrigerators. There are medical devices that are being used, for example, skin patches with small radio transmitters that can detect heart rates or perspiration and other health vital signs. So I think that's still a little bit early days, but there are projects going on where folks are using those technologies. Yeah, I think it's definitely healthcare is a ripe opportunity, particularly I think around remote care. So healthcare is very expensive. Having patients come to a doctor's office, wait, takes the doctor's time. So folks are looking at remote monitoring of patients, particularly elderly patients in the industrialized world, and being able to intervene when necessary, and be able to monitor those patients and tell them, you know, call them over the phone, say, hey, did you take your medicine? Or, hey, you need to get up more and move around more, things like that. What are the options to connect RFID to the cloud? So the passive RFID tag doesn't have an IP address, and nor does an active RFID tag, but they do connect to readers that have IP addresses. So typically what's happening is companies are having readers that collect the information, upload it to the cloud, and then data analytics and other applications are run on the data that's in the cloud. So that and again, that allows folks across the enterprise to have access to that information. What type of network are they using, and what type of security is being used? Well, so there are no standards right now for security. Most folks are using either cellular or Wi-Fi. You know, typically they're just using login-based security, but that's an issue, and I think that some of the leading players like Cisco are looking at developing standardized protocols for devices so that security can be improved and standardized across multiple applications. So you have one platform with a very strong security layer, and then use that to connect your devices. Is having an IP address necessary to be qualified as an IoT device? In my mind, no. A passive UHF tag doesn't have an IP address, as I just said, but it connects you. You can see that device, see where it is, see its condition via the internet, even though it doesn't have an IP address, and you can do that because the reader has an IP address. There are some people who say a device must have an IP address to be considered an IoT technology. I think that's, kind of semantics and is a little bit silly. Last question: how can IoT help in railways? So as I mentioned, the GE locomotive uses the cellular network as well as GPS to send information on the speed, the weight of that the locomotive is pulling, the fuel burn, and then it can optimize information. It can optimize its performance based on that information. There are IoT technologies where there are sensors in the wheels. When the wheels get hot, it means that there's a problem with the axle or the bearings, and so that information is then sent over the internet to a control station, and then when the train pulls into a station, a repair person can go and look at that, and that can be fixed before it becomes a serious issue. So a lot of preventive maintenance issues and some performance issues in the railway sector. I'm afraid that's all the time I have. I want to move on to our next presentation.